right, so I guess I can edit that out.
Yeah. Well,
All right, so the tale of two Georges, one being George Wingfield. What do you know about George Wingfield?
I know that he wasn't George Nixon, and that's the best thing about him. Other than that, I know he was an unpleasant person to the extent that he was adamantly against allowing women to vote. And I've heard all kinds of excuses about it was the times, people could be a product of their times. It's like, come on, we're talking about civil rights here. There doesn't need to be inequalities of that sort. And he was adamantly against it, so much so that while he had a major silver mining operation going on, he actually threatened that if women get the vote, he's going to go ahead and move his mining operation to another state. And then women did get the vote, but he was bluffing. He didn't pick up his entire silver mine and move it to another state for some reason. Maybe he just got lazy.
Moving a silver mine is kind of difficult.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he had his excuses. Maybe, couldn't rent a Bobcat that weekend. Trains weren't running, didn't have enough shovels, but he didn't deliver on what he said he was going to do. So, biggest thing about George Wingfield, he doesn't deliver on his promises. Secondly, he's a bit of an eccentric. I know he had all kinds of skeletons in his closet. Any particulars you want to know?
Did you want to discuss that particular bone structure that was maybe
Particular
discovered?
bone structure of skeletons in the closet. I can tell you about an intact rib cage I got to witness. Oh, hey, you know what? I just remembered one time I went digging around in George Wingfield's old digs and his old stomping grounds, and he stomped a little harder than most people do, apparently, because this intact rib cage told me there's a bit of shenanigans going on. It's not like a Redfield estate. We have one here in town where some people that moved into the Redfield estate eventually had some cause to go digging into the walls, and they accidentally found a whole bunch of bags of coins, multiple $1 million worth of coins that the Redfields just left behind. They couldn't be bothered with little details like that. And I didn't find anything interesting in that way, but Wingfield, he was several kinds of unpleasant, and
Now, how long did George Wingfield live? I imagine he's passed on by now, right?
some rumors say that he might have been he reached well beyond the ripe old age of 14, but somewhere short of 312. And I'm inclined to believe those rumors, but off the top of my head, I don't know the answer
he
more
kinda-
specifically than that.
Kind of a member of the undead.
Very much, yeah, he had severe haunting energy. They say there are 3 major ways to find yourself being haunted, able to see ghosts. One is you can have a particular frequency. Now, I'm not sure what it is, 19.8 hertz, 18.9 hertz. There's a specific known frequency that with something oscillating nearby you, like making an EMR signal, or making sound would be oscillating at a
What
frequency
was the
like
frequency
that.
again?
I'm not sure which it is. It's either 18.9 or 19.8, something of that.
Megahertz?
Just hertz.
No, it just hurts.
Might be kilohertz. The point is, it's easily enough looked up. You can even just get YouTube videos that'll play it for you, so that, let's say you're spending the night in a cemetery and it's just not getting very interesting, you can have that frequency going. It's like, oh good, I'm seeing ghosts now. Make the experience more complete. And carbon monoxide can also be another contributing factor to seeing ghosts. And yet another one is just having ever met George Wingfield. The guy just had spooky energy about him.
And you've never met him?
How can I be sure? I've got the glow-in-the-dark Ouija board. I've taken it to cemeteries a few times, and sometimes it got so vile that some of the old demons would leave. They just go away. It's like you guys You can have it. You hang out with Cthulhu and say, no.
So who would you say was
Cthulhu would say, I'm out of here. Aziraphale would say, I'm out of here. Just Asmodeus. It's like, nope, I ain't got time for this. They'd all leave. And like this, my name? Georgie Springfield. Yeah, that's it. And I've got my suspicions.
Who do you think's scarier, demons or George Wingfield?
Definitely George Wingfield.
Way scarier, huh?
Yeah, especially try to play Scrabble about him. Now the problem is I did have the glow-in-the-dark Ouija board, I did not bring my glow-in-the-dark Scrabble set. And I really think the guy cheats. I mean, Quetzalcoatl that's not really a 31 point
So
word of the triple word score.
Insinuating that you played Scrabble with George Wingfield's ghost?
It's a suspicion. I don't mean to insinuate it. I'm just saying the possibility is out there. I'm not trying to push the idea, but there, I'm suspicious. I mean, this character, whoever it was, whatever it was trying to say that they were not George Wingfield. That was the position they were coming from. But when confronted with direct questions about it, they somehow had a proscription around that. They're trying to be evasive and deflect about it. Wouldn't answer the question in the negative directly.
Mm-hmm.
All trying to find some kind of angles of plausible deniability, and that made me think, well, maybe George Nixon's involved. Because
now, who is George Nixon?
now George Nixon was might have been a senator. I'm not absolutely sure about that, but
Here in Nevada.
yeah, it might have been like the time it was.
Well, I mean, what was his relationship with Wingfield?
Mostly that of a mentor. The reputation is, I'm just like really good at this, predicting which way the laws are going to turn and where to invest. It's like, wow, gee, it's a neat coincidence. Look at my bank book. It's getting really fat. It's like, wow, I'm pretty good at this. I should take on a protege. And so the relation, I think, was like Nixon was eventually like he took Wingfield on as sort of a student, sort of his Kwai Chang Caine. So if you could see like George Wingfield as Master Po, if you could shave George Nixon's head and put glow-in-the-dark contacts in his eyeballs and make him walk with a staff and say "Grasshopper."
Have him in a temple with the incense burning and
Yes, get the wispy beard thing going on, and
snatch the sales bonds from my hand.
and it is very much like that. Yeah, the bond. And now the neat thing about George Nixon was he was the first guy to get into having bail bondsmen. He'd have a bail bondsman sell gift certificates, which they don't really cotton that sort of thing in the modern age, but that was a little trick of his that nobody else had going. He put the ad for it in the back of the comics right there with the sea monkeys and
So
Charles
instead of
Atlas.
handing out candy canes, he handed out gift certificate for Bell's bonds.
Well, remember, he was hanging out all kinds of canes, procaine and cocaine and lidocaine, and he was handing out candy canes.
Like
And he
to
was,
party a little.
yeah. He was handing out rattan canes. Now that was, if you weren't like looking when he came by, it was like you'd get a bit of the rattan cane and he'd just act all innocent. He had a little bit of that Bill Cosby smile with the jello, like.
That was Wingfield or Nixon?
Nixon did that most, but
So was Nixon?
Wingfield picked up on it a lot because remember, he was like where Nixon was like Master Po, and he'd be there with the glow-in-the-dark eyes, and this is what really confused people a lot was the way they used to call Wingfield Grasshopper, because, okay, he does have a little bit of a greenish tinge about him, and he is able to leap incredibly high. I think the record is something like 47.8 feet.
Wingfield was able to leap 47.8 feet.
Not every time, but I'm just saying, I think that was the record.
He doesn't sound like he was all human.
Nobody's sure if he was at all human.
Is he
That's the
possibly a
problem.
part of the lizard people?
No, it wouldn't be something like that. That's just mythic. That's just something that people made up for when the History Channel wanted to keep on doing productions, but they didn't want to do any work. They started coming up with things like lizard people conspiracy. No,
There are some lazy guys there over there.
they were incredibly lazy. But see, what makes the analogy to Kung Fu work was that you picture, you've got Nixon. You've got George Nixon with his shaved head and his glow-in-the-dark eyeballs, and he's looking for his student. And here, the neat thing about Wingfield is he could stand out there outside the temple for days at a time. It's like, has that boy moved? It's like, no.
Like, so is Wingfield so creepy that, let's say I just walked into an empty garage and he was hiding in a dark corner, would I be able to feel his vibe? Would the hair on my neck stand up, or?
The hair on your neck would actually grow backward. It would creep back in. Your arteries and veins would reverse polarity, so that the arteries would be moving like what the veins were doing. The veins doing what the arteries would be doing. The two halves of your brain would actually fire the corpus callosum. And they would say, okay, we're going to give you a nice retirement package. You go away. We don't need you anymore. And then they do a little bit of a do-si-do around each other. And when the music stops, they choose which ear to try to run out of. And
I take it you're not too fond of Wingfield.
Why? This is what I want to be when I grow up. No, I didn't say I'm not fond of Wingfield. I'm just saying he was incredibly creepy and spooky. And okay, so to complete the analogy, the way that Kwai Chang Caine made it into the temple, and he became the first Westerner that they allowed in. It was very much the same when Wingfield came to Nixon as a student, or didn't so much come to him. He didn't know what was drawing him there, but he would stand outside of the senatorial offices for days at a time, and the rains would come and they'd go away, and then people would realize, has he been like standing there for 15 weeks without moving and stuff like that? And
that's funny because you have to get into the what is it, the Shogenji Temple in Japan. You have to sit still outside of the temple and ask to be admitted as a monk. And sometimes they have to stand there for 2 days before the habit will let you. To really prove your merit.
It's a fair prospect. It's a fair process for engaging the prospect. The problem with Wingfield's version of that is that if he spoke actual words, it'd be too much to give away which languages he came to Earth to use. So what he would do is just telepathy. He'd try to just make contact directly. And this is where it gets creepy. Now,
this is where it gets creepy.
Well, sometimes people did walk in on him when he's in
I'm already
an empty.
Out.
Well, he'd be in an empty garage and stuff like that, and it would get. So people walk in and think there's something creepy in here. Maybe behind that big piece of sheet wood over there, but maybe that's there to protect an engine block or something. They go move a piece of the big sheet of plywood, and what do you know?
Maybe a Chevy or a Dodge engine block.
It could be either one, and usually what they would have is a stash of carburetors for 1968 Dodge Chargers. I mean, well, that's the way I do it. I'm surely not the only one that rolls that way, but you've got your stash there sitting in an empty garage, and you go rolling in. It's like, why is the young George Wingfield's hand sitting here holding this jack? Like, was he just like moving a car and something came and took him away? Couldn't be bothered with the details to let him let go? It was like, it's odd. He got his fingerprints onto some very strange parts of the world.
Did he hate women, or why didn't he want women to vote?
No, he did not hate women.
Just a chauvinist?
Yeah, it's kind of a chauvinism. Now, again, it comes back to automotive issues. Again, it's a good thing that you brought up the concept of walking in on an auto garage, because sometimes you go in there, you might find something creepy like, oh no, run! It's a woman trying to drive. I know, it scares me too. It scares me too.
I'm terrified of women driving.
I went to straighten out these people and said, how can you be afraid of women driving when you've seen that even the Green Hornet had a chauffeur who was Asian? Now, come on. If he can do something that brave, you can let a woman drive. And this is the gospel of equal opportunity.
We all know how great Asian drivers are.
Yeah, well, remember, the Green Hornet's Asian driver had certain advantages in the technologies because they used a specialized visor so that the driver was able to see the infragreen light that the car was throwing out ahead. Now, this is where Wingfield really did some damage in his time to the
Now,
future
Wingfield was
generations.
very wealthy. Did he have a driver himself? Or?
He had a driver, but what he did was he traded in the driver for a putter. And it was
I thought it was a 7-iron.
it was sadly annoying when he'd get out on the road. He'd be going about 4 miles an hour because he'd have this putter in the front seat, taking him all around town.
So they were just putting.
Yeah,
around.
he was petty. He was putty. He was even
He was
patty.
a petty putter.
Yeah. It was okay. So this grasshopper motif that he had going on got him into a little bit of friction with the Green Hornet and his driver because they could see, like, because of the infragreen visor, they could pick up on the grasshopper action in the dark.
You want to explain infragreen?
How can I explain infragreen? It's
Because there's infrared.
there's infrared.
But the Green Hornet came up with infragreen.
Well, infragreen is to green as infrared is to red. And boy, did we get lucky. I guess this would qualify as infragreen right here. Now, I don't want to. I guess I shouldn't have touched your cyanide capsule. You weren't going to use this, were you?
Just in case I got a little depressed.
I
wanted
didn't
to
mean-
check out early.
I'll wash it for you in case you want to use it later.
Sure.
Okay, did you have a question about the Green Hornets Kung Fu in particular, or where were we?
kinda-
Were we talking about?
I'm kind of interested in the discovery underneath Wingfield's.
Oh, okay.
Mansion.
Wingfield has some stomping grounds, and there was a discovery. You mean the calcium deposits?
The calcium deposits.
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I got intrigued because when I noticed these calcium deposits under Wingfield's old stomping grounds, I thought, oh man, was he serious or was he just kind of ribbing people here? That was the first thing I thought. I mean, what in particular do you want to know about the calcium deposits?
I didn't know if you wanted to comment anything on what was found.
Well,
recently.
they didn't have a whole lot left on them. Like usually when you pick up some ribs, you can like just keep the flavor just keeps for a long time. These must have been there for years because there was just no flavor left on these ribs whatsoever. I mean, none. I mean, I was ready to order dessert. Now, here's the problem with trying to order dessert using nothing but a Ouija board and a Scrabble that we're still. I had left the
So
great.
it'd be like Dine and Dash, but using the Ouija board.
Yeah, and I left the cemetery. The stomping ground was not part of the cemetery. It's a different place. It's just it was a structure that had belonged to Wingfield at some time, and it was a coincidence that I had both my glow-in-the-dark Ouija board and my Scrabble set with me. Like, maybe not entirely coincidence. I mean, because that's how I roll. But I wasn't able to get any clues about the calcium deposits through either one of those devices.
So if I was laying on the sidewalk with a knife stuck in my back and I'm still alive, would he just step over me and keep walking, or what kind of person was he in that sense?
Well, since he was the kind of person that had stomping grounds, I imagine
he empathic, or-
he'd probably stomp on the knife a couple of times.
Shoved a knife in deeper?
Yeah, and the main thing is giving it a twist. Well, he'd bring his own. He was fond of carrying 3-sided blades, and you give those a twist, and they get real problematic. Same as any other kind of just the yay big, going from a complete point, tapering about yay wide, and you build one of those with pointing 60-degree difference in orientation. No, 120-degree difference in orientation between 3 blades, and it gives you a lot of leverage. So plunge in and have a spiral design over only at the very end of the fins. That way, when you get to the end, that's when there's an automatic twist. You wouldn't even have to try. It's just built in. And then when you bring it out, there's automatically a lot of damage that's going to be against any grain of the tissues. There's no way you can avoid one of those blades, at least 1 or 2 of them being against the grain of the tissue. So that would guarantee a sort of a disruption, a kind of laceration that's going to cause very profuse bleeding.
If George Wingfield was playing checkers with a 6-year-old child, would he cheat to win?
No. And
No.
you profoundly seem to misunderstand what Wingfield was about. He would not be cheating at the sacred game of checkers. I don't know where you're getting like this kind of. Is it,
Well, I'm just trying to. I just want to learn a little bit more about him, about the man, and you seem to be.
No, he was had far too much respect for the royal game than to be doing something like that. But there was an inclination of his to want to use something like M&Ms as the checkers, and I think the excuse there was like all the ones that you capture and you get to eat them. Is like the more games you play, it's like most games where you get more and more